Okay.
Okay, hello everyone. Let's just wait a few seconds until everyone is with us.
Hi, everybody. Yeah, the people are rolling in, I can see.
Yeah, just a few seconds and we'll start. Yeah. All right. Okay, I think we can make a start. Good afternoon from São Paulo. Welcome everyone to another webinar sponsored by Cambridge. My name is Sergio Varela. I'm a product marketing manager and I look after the titles for the adults, young adults and higher education segment here in Brazil, based in São Paulo. Today we have a very special guest, Ben Goldstein. And the title of his talk today is Revisiting the Flipped Classroom. Ben has over 25 years experience in ELT as a writer, teacher trainer, and conference speaker. He taught materials writing for many years on the online MA TESOL program of the New School in New York. He has written 2 methodology handbooks for teachers, language learning with digital video with Paul Driver, and working with images. For students, he has co-authored the course book series Evolve, Eyes Open, Uncover, and English Unlimited, all for Cambridge. He has just completed working on the creation of Evolve Digital, a flexible course combining independent learning with synchronous teacher-led lessons. So before I hand over to Ben, some very quick housekeeping. You can interact using the chat box, of course, but please leave the Q&A, the question and answer box, for questions to Ben. So I'll keep an eye on it and I'll read the questions to him at the end, okay? It's possible to obtain a certificate of participation in this webinar. So at the end of our session, we'll put a link in the chat box to a very short feedback form about today's webinar, which is very important for our work. So after completing it, you'll be able to download the certificate in PDF format. You just put your name and that's it. Okay, so over to you, Ben. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Sergio. Thank you for that lovely introduction, making me sound very important. And welcome everybody to this Friday evening webinar here in Barcelona. And actually, I was just talking to Sergio, tonight is an extremely special night here. It's our kind of crazy carnival night because it's the La Nit de San Juan, or I suppose the Festas de São João in Brazil. I don't know if you have them in the Northeast. I've been told. Tonight tomorrow is San Juan, São João, and so tonight is a crazy night. So if you hear any kind of bangers or fireworks going on, don't worry. It's because the parties are starting. So I said to Sergio that I think at 8:30, which is the time it is now, we should be okay because it's still daylight here, but it's going to be a big party. So now Bianca says you have São João all over Brazil. Okay, sorry about that. It's a very important party here in Catalonia where I'm speaking. It's also celebrated all along the beaches here in the Mediterranean and also at the Atlantic. So I just thought I'd give you that little bit of cultural information before we start. Anyway, thank you very much for coming on a Friday afternoon and attending the session. It's called Revisiting the Flipped Classroom. So I'm going to be talking a little bit about what is the flipped classroom and is it still relevant to us today? And if so, how is it relevant? Like many innovations, education technology tools, things come and go. And the important thing, you've probably been hearing about the flipped classroom for a while now, but the important thing is how it has evolved and why could it still be relevant to us? Because it's certainly very different. The concept of the flipped classroom is certainly very different to how it was when it emerged a few years ago. So let's get going. Here's an outline of what we'll be looking at. So first of all, I'll talk about what it is, as some of you may not be sure, and where it came from. Then the pros and cons, because like everything, there are good things and bad things about this methodological approach. And then some do's and don'ts of a flipped approach. And then I'll be showing you how we have just embraced the flipped approach or flipped learning in Evolve Digital, which Sergio said at the beginning is a course that I've been working on for Cambridge in recent months. And then finally, we'll conclude by looking at the teacher's role. Where do you fit in this scenario, in this new scenario? Okay, so let's get going. So I'm going to ask you just to get an idea, and I do like these polls. Hopefully it will work well. This is a good example of an education technology that is kind of relatively new, but it's quite a nice thing to use in webinars. I want you to think about this question. How familiar are you with the flipped classroom, the concept? So you've got 4 choices there. I use it all the time. I've used it sometimes. Yes, I know about it, but I don't use it. And no, I'm not sure what it is. So if you go to Menti, are you familiar with this? If you have a cell phone, just go to Menti, just put menti.com in. I'm going to do that myself. Okay, and then I want you to put this code. Okay, so just 7 numbers in the code, and then I want you to submit your answer. Okay, and then hopefully I'm going to show you those answers in a second if the technology is working. So go to the Menti and use the code 6921071 and then submit your answer. I'll just give you a couple of minutes to do that. Already some comments in the chat about the concept, and some of you are saying, yes, I'm familiar, but don't use it very much. Let's see if that is going to be the kind of the general. Be interesting to see how many of you are aware of it or have used it or are use it actively. No, let's have a look. Just give you a couple more minutes. You can get to the Menti, okay, no problem. It's okay, just put in the chat if you've connected without any problem and voted. Just put yes, no problem. Thank you, Andre. Carla, thanks very much. Okay, so let's go to the results, and here they are. Can you see this results screen? Can you just say yes if you can? Can you see the results screen coming up? Good, thank you. So here it is in a big. There you go. So okay, so there you go. So very few of you have used it all the time. A good number of you have used it sometimes. 19, 11. Yes, but I've not used it, and 10, I'm not sure what it is. Okay, so that's an interesting cross section, but it's interesting that only 5 of you have said that you use it all the time, which is again, obviously it depends on what kind of profile your students are, but it's more likely, I think, that if you will have used the flipped classroom, if you're teaching adults or young adults, I think, certainly at the present. Can everybody now see the PowerPoint? Is that okay? Can you see the PowerPoint now? Just put yes. Okay, great. Thank you. Thanks very much. It's always you never know quite what's going on with these slides sometimes, so it's always good to know, to get the reassurance that you can see everything you should be seeing. So what is it, and where did it come from? And it's good that there's a few of you who are not sure what it is, because I'll explain. Let's go back March 2011. I first became aware of the flipped classroom in, about this time, 12 years ago. And you'll see there a guy called Sal Khan, and this is a TED-Ed video where he celebrated the arrival of the flipped classroom by saying, let's use video to reinvent education. And the basic idea behind the flipped classroom, it actually came from the tertiary segment in the United States, so universities. And the basic idea was to use video for the students to watch videos, content videos of, instead of attending the lectures that so imagine you're studying history or geography, instead of going to the class and watching your teacher lecturing you about a particular topic of history or geography, you watch a video of that at home, and then you come to class prepared to discuss it. Okay, so that's the basic idea. So video was very crucial to the concept of the flipped classroom at the beginning. And we're going back, March 2011. At the same time as the Khan Academy, by the way, this video has been viewed by 5 million, well, it's been viewed 5 million times. And I think this discourse is also very interesting. Let's use video to reinvent education. That kind of exaggerated language is very typical of the way people in EdTech talk. There's always some kind of, this education technology is going to transform or disrupt, reinvent. They're always trying to tell you that your life won't be the same once you embrace this technology. This is very typical of the way that these new education technologies, when they arrive, this is all the hype that surrounds them. And at the moment, of course, we're seeing it with ChatGPT and artificial intelligence. That's the one today. But in March 2011, it was the flipped classroom, no? At the same time, academics in the United States were also kind of promoting the concept. And this is the best definition and the one that is most commonly used to define the flipped classroom. It says work traditionally done in the class is now done at home, the lecturing and so on. And what was traditionally homework is now completed in class. But then this is Bergman and Sams. So then they go on to say, there is no single way to flip a classroom. Every teacher who has chosen does so differently. And this is an important quotation. It's more about a mindset, redirecting attention away from the teacher and focusing attention on the learner and learning. And I think that is very, very important, because that establishes the fact that flipped learning isn't necessarily about technology. It's not necessarily about education technology. It's about pedagogy, and it's about a whole new pedagogical approach where the learner is at the center and not the teacher. Okay, so there are lots of different ways to flip. But at the beginning, as I said, it was always really connected with these kind of academic videos or lectures. Yeah. So I think that's the key, the learner-centered classes, exactly as Samela has said. But it wasn't sold that way because we've had learner-centered classes before, at least in ELT. It was sold as flipped, something kind of sexy, that you turn something on its head to make the approach seem more innovative. So key concepts early on, the flips, we're going back to 2011, the key concepts early on was this idea of pre-class passive learning. So at the beginning, and this is really has changed now, but at the beginning, it was very true that the learners did not do very much with the videos. They watched the videos at home in a rather passive way in self-study. And then they came to class, and then the teacher activated their newly acquired knowledge, and they were more engaged and more involved as a result of that, so that you get more interaction, you get more discussion, and more focus on soft skills like critical thinking and so on. This has changed. So when we talk about revisiting the flipped classroom, what's changed, one of the most important things that's changed is that teachers realized early on that it wasn't any good for the students to be so passive, that they really needed to do something with that video if they were watching a video, because otherwise it didn't actually benefit the face-to-face classroom. So this concept of passive and active was a very clear concept early on, and that's one that has changed quite a lot. And the other interesting thing is that, to my mind, sometimes when you look at flipped classrooms, the active element, so the in-class element, is not as active as it should be. In other words, in order to activate that knowledge that the students have acquired, the teacher has to provide dynamic and interactive and engaging activities, and that isn't always the case. So these concepts of passive and active are very important, and we can revisit them. We should be revisiting them now. In terms of ELT, how did we conceive of the flipped classroom? I mean, in 2011, I can guarantee, you went to any ELT conference in the world and you would have had 15–20% of the talks on the flipped classroom, because that was the fashion at the time. But actually, was it really rocket science? If you think about it this way, it's the same concept that we've been looking at for years. Classroom time, the face-to-face time that you have with your students, is freed up for more collaborative, communicative activities. Why? How? By assigning the formal mechanical activities to do before the class. But Philip Kerr says, well, much of what flipping entails is similar to what language teachers have been doing for decades. In other words, it wasn't really anything special. Can anybody think of an example? There's quite a nice example, because Philip Kerr says that language teachers have been doing this for decades. But could you think of perhaps of an example of giving your students something to do at home in order to free up the class and make it more communicative? How would you do that in the old days before the flipped classroom exists? Any suggestions in the chat? Any? Because he's saying, Philip Kerr here is saying, it's nothing new for us, this idea of giving our students formal tasks to do before the class. Yes, okay, homework and then a role play, watch movies, listen to music, exactly, getting students to do things actively. And how would they complete assignments? Well, they might use a book like this. Do you remember this, everybody? The famous Cambridge English Grammar and Use, the Murphy. Murphy is an example of the flipped classroom. Absolutely. The students are presented with the grammar. There's the presentation, isn't there, on one side of the page. And then there's those rather, formal, some would say mechanical tasks, which the students have to do. Morphic traumatized generations. I'm not sure Cambridge would like that, Camilla, but anyway, yeah, it certainly had its day. But the point is, the point I'm trying to make is that flipping in ELT is not that much different, or at least in the concept that we've seen in the early days of flipping. It is not that much different to what Sal Khan was saying is a revelation. We already had something like that in ELT. And the reason is because language teaching is communicative, it is interactive, and teachers realized that they needed to not be doing activities, gap fills in class, and they needed to make the face-to-face class much more dynamic. But imagine if you're teaching history or geography in an American university, it isn't quite like that. So I think the flipped classroom, or the flipped learning, was something that kind of arrived in ELT. It was a big thing. But then we realized that we did some of those things already, and then it kind of was dropped a little bit. So I mentioned just before, how do we talk about education technology? And as I said, that image, that screenshot of the Khan Academy, Sal Khan, reinventing your classes, is very typical of how we talk about EdTech in general. And I don't know if any of you have heard of the hype cycle that Roy Amara was a university, a lecturer in the United States, sorry, not a scientist in the United States. And this idea of the hype cycle he invented was the concept of that what we do when a new technology arrives is that we overestimate its effect in the short term and then underestimate the effect in the long term. So that go back to 2011, everybody was talking about flipped classrooms. And this is the hype cycle, the Amara hype cycle. And there you can see the bottom, the technology trigger, the visibility is low. Then suddenly something arrives, some new technology arrives. Everybody gets really excited about it. There's a peak of inflated expectations. That's what's happening now with ChatGPT, right? Everyone's talking about it. That's today's flavor of the month kind of thing. Then there's that kind of trough of disillusionment when people realize, oh, hang on a second, maybe the hype wasn't as, great. Maybe it isn't so wonderful, and I've been hyped here. And then there's a kind of, it goes back again when the education technology is kind of established as a kind of norm, and what we call, it enters a kind of flat phase, what we call the plateau of productivity, when we realize that, yeah, it's okay, we can use this, but it's not as great as everybody said at the beginning. And if you look at any elements of education technology, you can put anything you like on this graph, or on this the cycle, let's say, and you can see, okay, what happened to virtual reality? Where is virtual reality now? Where are tablets now? Where are interactive whiteboards today? I remember going to a huge Cultura Inglesa in Sao Paulo, huge, I think it must have been ABSI, 2006, maybe 2007. Is that when, maybe I'm getting my dates wrong, is that when interactive whiteboards arrived? And 20%, I'm not joking, I counted 20% of the talks at that conference were about interactive whiteboards. And, that was the key, that was the peak of inflated expectations. And the Cultura had actually bought a lot of these interactive whiteboards, so I suppose it was in their interest to have promotional talks about them. But where, I remember Scott Thornbury gave the plenary session, and he, being rather anti-education technology, he referred to interactive whiteboards as interactive white elephants. And as you can imagine, that comment did not go down very well. But what's happened to interactive whiteboards since 2000, so in the last 15 years? Well, they've become institutionalized, haven't they? But are they innovative? Are they exciting? Well, I don't think they are particularly. And in actual fact, although we use them, they are, I think, the opposite to interactive, in the sense that it seems that they actually create more teacher talk and teacher presentation time. So that's why I put interactive whiteboard a little bit low on the graph there. So we are using them, but they're not at all innovative. They're not changing the way that we actually teach, which was promised to us. So can you see what I mean about this? I hope you find this useful. Maybe you've seen it before, some of you, this hype cycle. But I think when we look at the flipped classroom, something really interesting has happened. I haven't put it there. I've just put it at the top so that you can kind of think. But if you think about the flipped classroom, what happened there? There was a peak of inflated expectations. Then there was a trough, and then it went up again because of the pandemic, remember? Because suddenly we had to teach differently using Zoom or some kind of synchronous platform. And so what's interesting about flipped classrooms learning is that people weren't talking about it. They started talking about it again during the pandemic, and then we've come back after the pandemic. This kind of it's become a kind of norm. So this is what this talk is about a little bit, is what have we learned from the pandemic as well, and the way that the flipped classroom was taught. People were using the flipped classroom then. Good to see some Barbara, how are you? And there's Barbara saying we became too attached, talking about the interactive whiteboards. I think, yeah, it was the focus of the class. Yes, very much so. I think that was something that was very true at the time. And as I said, looking at today, you can obviously go back to the hype cycle, and you can put ChatGPT right up there at the top. There's this huge peak of expectations. And what do you know? It's the same guy, Sal Khan, is now, instead of talking about the flipped classroom, he's now talking about ChatGPT in the same, TED Talk platform. So I think that's kind of ironic in a way, but it shows you that all of these elements of education technology arrive and are treated often in very similar ways before they become kind of normalized. So let's look at the pros and cons of the flipped learning. Potential pros. Well, I think there are lots of good things about the flipped classroom. It's more personal. So imagine that you've got your students are doing some online, nowadays you wouldn't be English and grammar and use, okay? It's going to be some kind of application. I'm going to explain later how we do it with Evolve Digital, but some kind of self-study material online, perhaps with an app. They have greater choice about what they choose to, they have greater choice of what to do. They can pace themselves. You know, they can watch a video, they can rewind it, they can watch it again. Then it's much more appropriate for students with special educational needs. There are lots of new tools, for example, speech to text or text to speech software. All of these things are positive elements of self-study with digital tools. Students have greater ownership, and again, this is therefore in some ways much more suitable for adult learners who may be able to regulate their learning better. And in class, again, there's a very active focus here. If you do all of that work, if the students are doing all of that work at home, looking at the vocabulary, looking at the grammar, then they're going to come to class primed. And that allows the teacher to focus on the higher order thinking skills, competencies, social emotional learning, all the things that are kind of hot topics at the moment in ELT, work in the flipped classroom, of course. And a more interactive classroom environment is created. So I think this is undeniable. And that's why so many adults now are going for this kind of option, because they can see the benefit of doing that work beforehand and how that makes a more collaborative, more interactive space when you're face to face. But of course, we need to be wary of the hype. And if you look at Bergman and Sams, who were the first people to talk about the benefits of the flipped classroom, sometimes they go a bit over the top. You know, they say things like this: something amazing happened because we were not just standing and talking at kids. Many of the classroom management problems evaporated. So we need to be careful. It's not a panacea. We need to know how to deal with the flipped classroom and flipped learning. But it's clear that it has benefits. But as I said, be critical, be wary of the hype whenever you read people praising these new technologies. No. Potential cons, of course. Well, there's one huge one. I wonder if anybody can, in the chat, can suggest what is a real big con, a real big disadvantage of the flipped classroom. There's a classic one. Just while I have some water. Anybody think of a real exactly exactly, Menara. Students don't do the work. So students don't do it. And it may be because they're lazy. It may be because they haven't got the time. It may be because that work is not evaluated. And I think that's a key issue. If the institution doesn't evaluate that work that the students are meant to do on time, then clearly the students are not going to do it. And this creates huge problems for the teacher. Then, of course, as Barbara has said, a lack of access to technology. And there's some good comments coming in here. Maybe they just do it, but they don't think about it. So the questions that are given to them to think about the material they've looked at is not, doesn't generate any debate in class because the students haven't had time to reflect on it. No. So they don't do the work, they have tech issues, and they're unsure how to self-regulate their learning. I think this is almost the most important one. Students need to know how to set themselves goals. They need to know how to measure their time. And if students are not accustomed to doing that, then it can be a bit tricky. So we're asking a lot of students. Students have to be kind of motivated to do that. And in class, as I said before, sometimes the problem for the teacher is the activities are not as active as they should be. And one of the reasons is because some of the students haven't done the work. And it's very often, I've observed a lot of flipped lessons, face-to-face lessons. And sometimes it's a really good idea for teachers just to do a diagnostic test at the beginning and put the students who have done the work with students who haven't done the work, and that at least saves some time. Because the very worst thing in a flipped classroom is for the teacher just to repeat the presentation of what the students were meant to do at home. And this is obviously is a huge problem, because it just becomes completely counterproductive. Okay, now if you want to read a bit more about I've done a very quick analysis of what it is and the pros and cons, but there's an excellent white paper written by Philip Kerr, in fact, which you can download. So there's a QR code. Please there's some great white. I don't know if you know about the Cambridge white papers, but they are really good. I wrote one actually a few years ago on visual literacy. They're very, very good for getting kind of an in-depth understanding of a concept or a methodology or a methodological approach like flipped learning. So this is a good place to go for supplementary reading. Okay, so then do's and don'ts of a flipped approach. As I said, I've observed lots of classes on Zoom, and it's also face-to-face classes of teachers who have embraced a flipped approach, especially since COVID, since the pandemic. So I've thought some practical do's and don'ts would be good to include here. And of course, in terms of what I've been working on at Cambridge and Evolve Digital, we've been looking at two elements. This is very important to understand in case you're not sure, because obviously you can flip, as Bergman and Sam say at the beginning, you can flip anyhow, any way you like. But let's say the way that it's become established now in ELT is to have your asynchronous self-study for the students to do online, very often with an app, as I said, and then a synchronous activation, which would be face-to-face or online, but it's live, it's synchronous, yeah? So the students could be on Zoom or another platform, or it could be really face-to-face with the teacher in the classroom, picking up on the asynchronous self-study work, right? So I'm going to look at both of sides. I'm actually going to start with the second, although you do the self-study first, because I want to talk about do's and don'ts of teachers. And obviously that means looking at the second step first. So general tips, and forgive me if some of this is a bit basic. If you're not teaching on, how many of you are teaching online now? Could you just put yes, I am, or sometimes, or hybrid? Renan, Juliana. Okay, so a lot, right? Most of my classes are online. Okay, 90% hybrid. Okay, that's good. So some of this may be 100% online. Okay, let's then look at some general tips for in-class work. Okay, so whether that is Zoom or really face-to-face. So I think some of the things I've noticed when I watch Zoom classes, not so much face-to-face, but Zoom, is that sometimes teachers just go in and they don't do the things that they would have done in a face-to-face class. You know, we've all been told it's good to use warm. Sometimes I've even seen teachers not actually greeting the students, but just going straight in because they have material they need to cover which they need to get through, and they'd forget the warmers and the quizzes and the greetings. And that's really quite shocking sometimes to see that, because that is kind of the essence of a communicative classroom. So these quick spontaneous tasks are very, very important if you are teaching, as I said, in something like Zoom. Lots of uses of good tools and games, and sometimes I think that these are overused and or used for the sake of it, because you can do it, and very often the tool or the game doesn't generate much language. And sometimes I worry that the students are kind of messing around too much with the technology, trying to get it to work, and it's not language generative. So I think, yes, use them, but don't overuse them. Carminara is saying, I do the opposite and do too much small talk. It sounds like I should be going to your class, Minara, but I have seen some classes where tends to be the case where teachers have a very set syllabus they've got to get through, and they've given their students, grammar and vocabulary work, and they just want to check that the students have done it. And make sure to leave time for feedback after discussion tasks. So again, this is really important. And again, often there isn't enough time. The students need to know how well they've done in a breakout room or something like that. And it's incredible how often teachers just don't have, the time is squeezed and the teachers don't have time to give that feedback. It's very, very important. And again, need always to make links to the learner's world and experiences where possible. Sometimes, as I said, again, this is an absolute classic, basic tip for any communicative language teacher. But again, it's funny how sometimes with the screen, this doesn't happen face-to-face, but with in-class work on screens, sometimes this can happen, and students are kind of thinking, well, this is not relevant to me in my world. You need to always try and make it relevant to their world experiences. And general tips for in-class work online: consider use of time. Everything takes longer online, as you know, and use the breakout rooms for collaborative speaking tasks only. I've seen so many classes where the teachers use breakout rooms for language activities or something like that. It takes so long to open them, to close them, to monitor them, that it seems like a real waste to me, of a wasted opportunity. And use chat for mechanical tasks. So again, I've seen very often teachers using breakout rooms for more mechanical tasks when they should be doing active speaking activities, active production activities. So anything which requires a gap fill, any closed answer, then it's much better to use private chat or open class chat. And again, I've seen many teachers just getting students to simply read out. So if they're using a slide or something, just to read out text on a slide, which again seems to me not generative at all, and just takes up a lot of time. Excuse me. I think the thing we have to remember, I think this is true, and if you're experienced teachers, you know this, but we need to ask ourselves always, what is the best use of my face-to-face class time? And I think when we're teaching on Zoom, we kind of forget that. Let's have some more water. Oh, so Luis Jr. has something. Yeah, I love the breakout rooms, but I always ask them to share the results of the discussion afterwards. Yeah, absolutely. That's a very good. Otherwise, sometimes you just close the rooms and then there's no time for debate. Okay, and for the tips for breakout rooms in general, I think you need to choose a simple task with a clear outcome. With clear instructions, include a time limit and roles, a spokesperson, a note taker. Think how students make a note of these instructions, taking a screenshot or a photograph on their phone, and then checking the instructions before you open the breakout room. That seems to be an absolutely, a classic thing you have to do. And lots of thinking time. It can be in Zoom, it can be strange to have silence where you're not saying anything, the students are not saying anything, but they do need time to think and to reflect before a speaking task, particularly. It's also important, obviously, to monitor and visit each room to check the students are on task and give a short warning to finish. So I hope these tips haven't been too basic. It depends on your experience, but I have been looking to prepare this talk. I had a look at a lot of classrooms. I was given the opportunity to look at a lot of Zoom classrooms, and I was amazed at how some teachers seem to have forgotten the communicative kind of the pillars of communicative language teaching. Let's go back to another great book that I think everyone should have. This is Philip Kerr's 30 Trends in ELT, and of course, flipped learning is one of them. And he makes a very good point, which we mentioned before when we looked at the pros and cons. But he says it such an eloquent writer. He says it in a very eloquent way. He says learners need to be effective self-regulators, and this is more likely to be the case in higher education. and it is best introduced gradually and experimentally. Teacher support for learners during self-study time may be imperative. So this is very important for if students are not used to that kind of self-study and not used to regulating their own learning, then this is absolutely a classic point to make. I really recommend this book. It's just been published by Cambridge, and he really he focuses on all kinds of different trends, both tech ones and other things like social and emotional learning and well-being and so on. So it's a little pocketbook that's a great read. I think I have it here, in fact, in front of me. So plug for that. But it's a great book. And another interesting quotation about the self-study element is from Paulo Dantas. I don't know if Paulo's here this afternoon, but from Troika, some of you may know him, but I really I asked him what his opinion of flipped learning was. And I think he makes a very good point here where he says, I think we need to make these flipped moments as engaging as possible by providing students with more than passive consumption of content. So this is, remember that we mentioned that word at the beginning of the flipped approach. There was this idea that it was passive, that the learner was passively, a bit like Duolingo, going through it step by step in a very passive way. And he says that's what we need to avoid. Even if it means interacting with AI, we might be getting somewhere. In the end, it has a lot to do with user experience. If our flipped experience is sexy enough, we might just go for it. And so Paulo puts a very, in a way, a very good segue for my next point, because what I'm going to explain now is how we've been doing this with Cambridge, with Evolve Digital, to try and make this flipped experience as sexy as we can. So this is a little moment of the talk where I talk about this product, which may be of interest to you, and shows how we are revisiting flipped learning. So basically, what is Evolve Digital? I don't know if you've heard of the Evolve language course book. The actual paper-bound book is one way you can study or teach with Evolve. Idioara knows the book. So Evolve is an adult level course, 6 levels, and now there is, apart from the paper format, there is an online course with materials for independent, asynchronous, so using a tablet or using a smartphone, for example, and teacher-led synchronous classes. Thank you for saying it's a great book. Indioara, I hope I pronounced your name properly. For adults and young adults, 6 levels, and 60 to 120 hours with the synchronous lessons. So there's the students course. The students have the material. I spent many years, 2 years during the pandemic, adapting Evolve for a digital environment, a smartphone, for example, or a tablet. And I'll show you some examples of that in a moment. Then there's the teacher's companion. And that can be, as I said, it's all done through PowerPoint presentations, which can be delivered through Zoom or face-to-face. And then there are tests included in the student's course and in the teacher's companion. So the interesting thing about the self-study material is that it is full of production tasks. Now, of course, the idea of flipped learning is the students do, they say, the more mechanical, more passive work. That's how it was in the old days. But now we have the technology to get students doing activities which involve speaking and writing, as well as vocabulary and grammar work and the other skills work. So there are a variety of speaking activities, and the students do these activities. They can play themselves back, they can listen to themselves, they can record themselves, and they can do these final speaking tasks where they send you their audio, okay? And then you can evaluate that. So that's the important thing. The students aren't alone. They do have you there to provide feedback on the production tasks, speaking and writing. Speech recognition, again, there's an element of that in the role plays where the students have a role they have to repeat. that if they don't repeat it, they're not intelligible, then the program will say, hello, can you say that again? Which is also very important. It's starting to give some kind of feedback to the student automatically. And lots of learner support here with writing and speaking tasks. So lots of preparation, lots of scaffolding, lots of support, which is what students need when they're doing self-study. And then the students then can, as I said, send you their writing task. And the whole thing has been designed, obviously, to work, optimized for mobile or smartphones, also for tablet as well. But it's very user-friendly. And there you can see one of the units: vocabulary presentation, grammar presentation, and then skills work. There are animated grammar videos. Some of them are very funny. Again, to kind of liven up the grammar presentations through these kind of they're quite sort of trendy animations, which I think will make that the presentation a lot more engaging for the students. And there's a real teacher video. So they have you there to give them feedback on the speaking and writing, but they also have a teacher at the beginning of each unit and at the end of each unit to explain the objectives of the unit. I'm just going to show you an example. You may know her. Each unit, each level has a different real teacher, but in one of the books, it's Isabella Villas-Boas.
Again, are you ready for some more learning? So let's get Unit 2 going. So much stuff. That's the name of the unit. Do you have too much stuff? No. Are you sure? Most of us have some stuff that we don't really need, or we don't need anymore. It can be hard to throw things away. Why do you think that is? In Lesson 1, we'll talk about things you've had for a while. We'll learn some new words to talk about possessions, and we'll figure out how to use the present perfect with ever, never, for, and since. In Lesson 2, we're going to talk about things you own. What's your favorite possession? For most people these days, it's their phone. My phone has my whole life in it.
Okay, so you get an idea. What I like about these real teachers, and Isabella does it very well, I think, is that it's very personal. There you can see her there. I think she's sitting probably in her living room. And yes, she's charismatic, and she does introduce the objective. She explains what the students are going to do, but that adds a personal touch, a kind of human touch. What's your most important possession? Mine is my smartphone. I'd be lost without it. And so this is, again, a way for the student to have that company of a real teacher. And as I said, these real teachers appear at the beginning of the unit and at the end of the unit to wrap up. So I think that's a way, again, to make this asynchronous self-study more human, more personal. Okay, and then we also have and this is, and if you know Evolve, you know that one of the really key elements of the methodology, one of the things that I'm most excited about, is the way we use these real students who are at the kind of level of the students you're teaching. And we have these little micro kind of videos, these which I think are really nice because they represent accessible role models for your students. And in levels, the first 4 levels up to B1 plus, they are students at the same level, more or less, as your students. But then at B2 and C1, we have expert speakers. Here's Eric, for example, from Ecuador. And these are people who live in New York, live and work in New York, but originally come from other countries. And there's a Brazilian guy called João. And I think it's kind of nice on the night of San João to listen to him. Let's have a look at this. He's talking about being an underdog. And he talks about what it is and what they, if he has ever been one, and what people might do if they cheer or not for this underdog.
I can think about my nephew when he was trying to get to university in Brazil, and he was able to get into one of the best one in the country. And he comes from a small town, so we didn't really expect that he would make that achievement. I think I was, especially coming to work in the States, I didn't manage the language from the beginning, and being able to get to where I got, I think it was a big achievement also. I think you really look at them and they don't have the same chances that everybody else, and it's more like it's deep in your heart. You have that feeling that you really hope they could do better. And think of during Carnival in Brazil, when you have the big parade, and each one of the people over there, they have their own school to support. Those schools, they are part of the neighborhood. So you basically part of the neighborhood, and it makes a lot of sense for you to support your own neighborhood.
There we go. I wanted to play you, I think it's a little bit long, but to give you an idea at a higher level, at B2 level, for example, C1, they're quite developed, these sound bites, and oops, excuse me. And I think it's very nice for students to have these, as I said, accessible role models that they can really identify with and empathize with, perhaps. And in the case of these people who are living in New York, they have become very successful. And I think at a high level, that's very, very important for students to see that. So just to finish this part about Evolve, I think with this material, with the combination of the asynchronous and then the synchronous, students can be active learners, they get enough support and feedback, and they enjoy varied and dynamic content in relevant and real life activities with these role models. So finally then, I've got just 6 or 7 minutes. Where are we now? So I don't know how many of you have if any of you have started using Evolve Digital or any other kind of flipped learning program, or let's say a course which is embracing this methodological approach. But I think Evolve Digital does as good a job as we can really in today. And of course, technology is changing, updating, and we may very soon be able to do a lot more, especially with the asynchronous element. But I think it's important to understand your role in this, because clearly for students who are very busy, who are, perhaps living in Sao Paulo and, live in one part, and then they had their classes in another part of the city. For them, and they took an hour to get through traffic to get to their lesson. For them, of course, this is a no-brainer. This is going to be so much easier for them, and saving time and so on. And of course, during the pandemic, we were all doing that. We were all learning that way. And it's the adults, of course, and the young adults that are now most inclined to embrace this kind of methodology. But where does that leave you, the teacher? And I think this is the important thing, and that's why I wanted to leave that to the end. And again, going back to Philip Kerr, he says that during both the self-study and the face-to-face classes, the teacher's role changes. So the important thing is that if you are engaged, if you're working in a kind of program like this, where the students are doing a lot of the self-study work, your role becomes more of that as a motivator and a supporter, become much more important than the traditional role of the instructor and the provider of models. And feedback will need to be both more personalized and more formative. I think this is very important. Just look at the guy Joao, who we just saw just now. I mean, that's another model. That's another role model for the learner who sees that video. And so that means that the pressure is off you to be the model, to be the traditional model of the instructor. And you become more of a motivator, a facilitator, a supporter. And students do need that support, especially when they're doing so much study on their own. So I think this is also, of course, connected with other trends in ELT, where we're focusing on soft skills, the Cambridge learning competencies, and so on, where of course we need to be proficient language teachers, but we need also to consider other skills that students need to develop. So I think this goes hand in hand with other trends in ELT, which are focusing on soft skills and so on, where we feel that we need to communicate with our learners, not just as teachers, instructors, but as people. And the whole area of social and emotional learning comes into that. And we definitely did that during the pandemic, when we were able to establish some of us were able to establish very strong connections with our students online. And that showed that role of the teacher there as a kind of emotional supporter, not just as an academic supporter. Now, so if you think about it that way, the flipped classroom, the flipped learning kind of goes hand in hand with other trends in ELT and in education in general, realizing that we are much more than just language teachers, that we have a kind of more a role which is more all-encompassing. So again, to sum up that, we are no longer the model, the instructor, the content provider. We monitor, motivate, and assess in the pre-class space, in the self-study space, and manage and facilitate learning in the in-class space. And that does require some training, it's true, and it is something new for us. But I think it's something, as I said, which we should embrace, because as I said, I think it is in line with other developments that are taking place in language teaching. And one final quotation, one final question. Is it right for you, the flipped approach? That's a huge question. You really have to think, you have to ask yourself, to what extent do its advantages match your school's education approach, you and your fellow teachers and your student profile? You have to be aware of those things in order to see whether it's right for you. But it is absolutely clear that for adults now and young adults, it is a path that so many of them are choosing. So we have to kind of be ready for that. And will all three, the school educational approach, the teachers and the students, be able to respond to the challenges that flipped learning provides? I think, for example, it is the way to go. But at the same time, I think that the face-to-face environment is absolutely, if that's what you feel more comfortable in and your institution supports you, then that is absolutely fine to go ahead and carry on with that. Or using Evolved Digital also face-to-face, if you can do that. And many institutions are doing that. So I am by no means saying you have to embrace this. We just have to be aware that this is what some students are now demanding or wanting, and we need to be prepared for that eventuality. So final quotation, and I think this is what I said, it wraps up. Remember what we said at the beginning, this is how it arrived in 2011, with all that hype and all the reinvention, all that talk. Forget all of that, forget all about that. The important thing, it's not about the technology, okay? It's about the pedagogy. And this is from Nikki Hockley's, another great book in the same series. There it is, the 50 Essentials for Using Learning Technologies. And she's an ed tech specialist. And I love her quote again. She has a section on the flipped classroom, and she says, it's important to remember that the flipped classroom is not about technology. It's about pedagogy. It requires a change in perception of your role from explainer of language to facilitator of learning. And I think that's a lovely way to finish. Someone who knows a lot more about ed tech than I do. So before I finish, I want to thank you. And I know we have some time for questions. It's exactly 9:30, but I do have one more important thing to share. with you, so don't go away. And this is very exciting. It's not often that I give a webinar and then in a space of a few weeks then appear in the country that where you are all where you're watching me from. But actual fact, I will be in Brazil in July, and I will be part of the Cambridge Days, which will be taking place from the 17th to the 21st of July. So that's just less than a month's time. And this is the really exciting part, I've been told by Cambridge, I hope this is right, Sergio, that you can now register. Yeah. You'll be the first ones, he's saying yes, and that you have the, let's say, the first opportunity to register for the Cambridge Days, which will be taking place in these cities in Brazil. So on the 17th of July, Fortaleza, Porto Alegre. I know I've already seen some people from Fortaleza. Go and sign up now before it fills up. 18th of July, Recife and Curitiba. 19th, Salvador and Brasilia. 20th, Rio and Belo Horizonte. And then the 21st, Sao Paulo, and online. And I will be speaking at, not all of those, obviously. I can't be in Fortaleza and Porto Alegre on the same day. So there'll be two teams, and I will be doing the kind of northeast and the coast. So I'll be speaking in the first column. I'll be speaking at Fortaleza, Recife, Salvador, Rio, and then all of us will be in Sao Paulo and online on the 21st. So I hope you can join. I'll be giving another talk, not the same one. It'll be a different talk on teacher roles, also related with Evolve Digital. But please take advantage, take that photo of the QR code, and look forward to seeing you at one of those events in July. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ben. Thanks a lot for all the very informative, interesting content. I think everybody learned a lot today. Thank you very much. Thanks a lot for being with us here in Brazil. And thanks a lot for everyone in the call. We don't have any specific questions about the content in the Q&A answer. This is the last chance.
Anybody, we got a few minutes. If anybody wants to ask a question in the chat, I can see the chat, and that's my dog. My dog knows this. I think the fireworks have started here in São João, and so the dog is starting to bark. Unfortunately, you know dogs don't like fireworks, right?
Yeah, no questions so far.
Okay,
so I think that's it.
All right. Well, hang on. There's a question from Larissa. Okay, that's a good question. I think is flipped classroom suitable for all ages and levels? Well, I think it could be used for teens as well, but I do think, and it is used with teens, but it's this issue of the self-regulation that we spoke about. The adult learners are going to be have more experience at regulating their own learning, and the problem it could be is that the teenagers just don't do it. So if you do it with teenagers, it has to be the institution has to evaluate that work that the students do in the pre-class work, the self-study. So that's the key issue. It has to be evaluated. Otherwise, I think you're going to get this problem where the students just don't do it or not motivated to do it, and then the teacher has to do double the work, right? And you don't get the benefits of the flipped approach. So it is more appropriate, I would say. It's not impossible to use with kids, so certainly teens, but you do need to fulfill certain criteria. I think with adults, and that's why Evolve seemed to be the natural for Cambridge. It seemed to be the natural, segment to include, to embrace the flipped learning, because for adults it clearly seems to be more effective. So Barbara says teachers are being asked to provide more personalized feedback at the same time as assigned. Yeah, this is true. I think there is an element of that workload going up because the feedback has to be more personalized. And you know, if you've got a lot of students in a class, then that does mean more work. What can I say? I think, you know, the teacher, it really depends on your institution, but it can increase your workload. But I think there is an art to giving feedback. I think in Zoom, particularly, those kinds of platforms, it can be very easy to give personal feedback through the chat, much easier, in fact, than face-to-face. So there are some benefits. It's just a question of how you need to present that feedback to your students, I guess. But spontaneous personal feedback works very well, as I'm sure you know, in a platform like Zoom. Okay. Any other comment or? Okay, thank you, Barbara. So Marcia is saying that she agrees with Barbara's comment there. Yeah, I mean, it is new for a lot of us. This for the teacher, it could require some more work, but I think that is often in the early days. And remember what Philip Kerr said, to introduce it gradually, if possible. If the institution can introduce it gradually with some flexibility, then it will be easier to adopt. Any other questions? Okay, well, thank you very much in that case for attending. And I hope to see some of you face to face. It's a very nice thing because it doesn't happen very much in webinars. Normally you give a webinar and then it's like, well, goodbye and maybe see you at the next webinar. But in this case, I have the opportunity I'm very lucky to have the opportunity to come to Brazil in a few weeks. And I hope to see you in one of those 5 cities that I will be at. And if I can't see you in person, I hope you might be able to go to one of the other cities on the tour, and if not, online. The Sao Paulo Cambridge Day, there will be 6 speakers and it will be online, so again you can enjoy that. So thanks again very much, and I hope you have a great evening, and I'm going out to enjoy the party.
Thank you. Thanks a lot, Ben. Thank you everybody for joining us today.
Thank you,
See you in the
Sergio.
next one.
Thanks very much, everybody. Have a great evening. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye then.